Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video of our admissions panel. We have admissions officers from Columbia, Yale, Michigan, Darden, and Chicago, and they're extremely candid about trends in the admissions world right now, in the MBA admissions world, sharing a variety of data points that are favorable to applicants for the coming year. So you won't want to miss it. Meantime, you also might not want to miss your opportunity to gain more direct insight from the experts. So please take us up on a free consultation with mbaMission. You can find that information on our website, mbaMission.com. We are consistently ranked #1 on GMAT Club and Poets and Quants in terms of five-star reviews, and I think you'll find that our free session, it will be extraordinarily helpful. It's, again, candid, there's that word, and honest. There's no sales pitch. It's really just a chance for you to learn more about your candidacy and for us to give you the straight goods that you would expect. So check that out and check out our admissions panel. Thanks to our guests for joining us, and thank you to our attendees for joining us. This is something that we do every year. We have some new faces here this year, which is really nice. It started off, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, maybe about 6-7 years ago. I think Bruce and has been here for all of them. I think he's been very generous with his time, we've really just been doing this to try to give people an opportunity to hear from the people who are hear directly from those who are going to be helping to make the decisions. But also, like I said initially, just one of the things that's important to me, as someone who, by the way, I'm Jeremy Scheinwald, founder of mbaMission. Forgot to introduce myself. One of the things that I've tried to do over the years, as I've been in this industry, is try to disabuse people the notion that this is a scary process, that we have scary people in this. And so you can see that everyone here is smiling and kind and really is just trying to get to know you. And I think that's something that's really important. So let me introduce everyone who is here today. Unfortunately, actually, so the joke in the run up to this was that your name had to be some version of Donna or Diana to be here today. But that said, Donna Levinson has a graduation event at some important MIT event tonight. It was a graduation event, but anyway, and she couldn't make it. But we still have a pretty high Donna quotient here. So and also to Michael Robinson, thank you so much for joining on relatively short notice to fill in for Amanda Carlson. So we have a Michael Robinson here from the Senior Director of Admissions from Columbia. Bruce DelMonico here, the Assistant Dean of Admissions from Yale. Usually at this time, Bruce and I start with a little banter about how the Bruins are doing, because I live in Boston and he's from Boston, and this usually coincides with the NHL playoffs, which it does. It's just the Bruins are out. So
I think we need to talk about how the Celtics are doing this year instead.
There we go. And then we've got Diana Economy from Michigan Ross, another very friendly face. Donna Clarke from the Darden School of Business at UVA, my alma mater, and Donna Swinford, Assistant Dean for Student Recruitment and Admissions from Chicago Booth, and Donna with an ONNA. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really, really nice to see you. I really appreciate your willingness to do the panel, and we can see another smiley, friendly face. So thank you. Okay. So let's get into it. So I'm happy to take some questions from the audience, but I've got some prepared questions as well of my own. We'll kind of go back and forth. Maybe I'll skip ahead of mine. I put them all in PowerPoint so that it sort of, I can always leap ahead. I may just improvise as well. So let's get started, I guess. Oh, by the way, yes, before we do get started, there's going to be a recording of the webinar sent in a couple of days. We're also going to post it on YouTube. And to please, you just ask the the chat box so that it's one less thing for me to manage if we're using the chat and the Q&A. I found the chat to be much easier to use as a moderator. yeah, just please, just please ask questions. If you have questions, please ask questions that are not hyper particular to you. So they have to have some odd level of applicability in order for me to ask the question. So if you're saying like, you want a quick snap profile evaluation, that this is not the place for it. But if you have a question that has applicability to others, then this is the place for it. And we have a little more than, we have about 90 minutes here. And if you guys have questions, we'll fill the whole 90 minutes. And wow, I can still see that there are more people entering the room, which is great. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's start with the big picture. And I will just start with I'm trying to stick with the good news theme these days. Because we all need good news, right now, especially. So, if you could just start by sharing, a development at your school, something that's just been good news for your school, or something that's happened in the last year that you can share with people. I don't know if everyone has the same counterclockwise, clockwise thing that I have. So I'll just, I'll start with. I'll go with different schemes for organization today, but I'm going to start with what I see on my screen, then I'll move to alphabetical, reverse alphabetical, all sorts of things like that. But we'll start with Bruce. Give us something good that's going on at Yale. That's gone on at Yale in the last year.
Sure. Well, Jeremy, you and I just caught up, and one thing that I would share that's more immediate, I think that hopefully is common to all of our schools. This past Monday, we had graduation, which was exciting, and it's the first graduation we've had in person in 3 years. Or is it 4? 3 at least. So that was really exciting. In terms of more of a significant development, and it was actually great to see everyone, so many students in person I haven't seen in so long, and so that was a really exciting experience. But in terms of maybe a more significant development or piece of news, this past year the school has undergone a full curricular review. We have our we think is rather distinctive integrated curriculum that we will continue, but we are always evaluating. And this year, went through a really broader, more systematic review of the curriculum. And so I'm still waiting for the report out to see that, but that's been an exciting development that's taken place as sort of hopefully, knock on wood, the pandemic winds down and we return more to normal in-person the academic experience.
Great. On my screen, I have, I'm going reverse clockwise here. Sorry, is Diana Economy. Tell us about what's going on at Michigan Ross these days.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. And yes, congratulations to all of our graduates across our schools. So, our Michigan Ross grads actually graduated a little bit earlier. So they finished at the end of April. So we had our graduates at that point, and then our first year students finished their signature map project. So a 7-week consulting-like engagement that all of our MBA ones do in March and April. But one thing I'm excited about now is that May ends up serving as this month that's sort of this bridge between their map experience and when they start their internship. And it's been fascinating to see all of the different ways our students have utilized May. There was a giant trek to Israel with probably 100 students. There were study abroad experiences in multiple different locations. But one of my favorite things that the students do in May is something that's called Ross Open Road. And these are various teams of students, about 4 or 5 of them, and they are given a minivan, right, to go drive around the country and work with different social entrepreneurs. And each team kind of picks a different theme, might be around healthcare, might be around working with minority-owned businesses, might be with working with immigrant-based businesses. And so they get a chance to work with all of these for a week at a time. And the kind of impact that they can have on the types of small businesses that they work with, even in just a short period of time, is really great. But for me, as you think about students who tend to go to the major metros, as our students do, and to big companies, to be able to see small businesses and the interior of the country a little bit more intimately through this kind of program, it's just been awesome to see where they've been headed through this program that's called Ross Open Road. So it's something I'm excited about right now.
That's super cool. That sounds like a really fun program. Michael, you're next. I'm pretty sure I can guess what your big development is, but if you want to, I don't want to look foolish, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to share 2 things, but first is our 2 new buildings. So we literally doubled the square footage of Columbia Business School. So now we have approximately 500,000 square feet with two buildings, Kravis Hall and Geffen Hall. And for someone who's been at the school, this is my 20th year. I think they announced it in 2011. I think they broke ground in 2016. Yeah. So the joke for many students and staff, like the building is always coming next year. But it's finally here. So that is the super exciting thing. Now we still have some significant COVID restrictions. But having said that, though, we are opening up, and we do have started visitations where people can come to visit campus, and we have them sessions like twice a week now, but only for people who sign up in advance online, and then also everyone who enters the building as of today still has to be vaccinated. The other thing I want to share is a bit more personal. So Fortune magazine just came out with their Fortune 500 list, right? And for the first time since first time we have a Black founder as one of the members of the list. And he's a young guy, 42 years old, Robert Refkin, who started his company called Compass 10 years ago. So about 6.5 billion in revenue and so on. So it kind of made that cut. So like number 495. But to know someone as a student and then see them just do some amazing things. I mean, I know we all have these stories, but when it happens, it makes my heart burst with pride.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Donna Clarke, I think I can guess too, but go ahead, Donna Clarke.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. I guess a couple pieces of news that would probably be of interest to applicants. Our application went live yesterday. So the entire application, all the questions, the application itself, recommendations, deadlines, everything went live. So we're relieved and excited about that. And I guess I would say we've also met a big milestone. Our development office has been undergoing multi-year $400 million campaign, and they are announced that they are very close to closing that, about a year ahead of schedule. And the reason I think it's relevant is a big piece of that are new scholarship dollars for Darden students. Our dean is a big advocate for making the MBA affordable, believes, very strongly that an MBA can take you anywhere, from anywhere to anywhere, and has been very focused on making our MBA program more affordable. And so I mentioned the capital campaign just because a big component of it will be scholarship dollars for admitted students. So we're really excited about that for next year.
Okay. And Donna Swinford, tell us what's going on in Chicago. What's been going on at Chicago booth this year?
Thanks. So, like very similar to all the other schools, we are having our graduation a week from Saturday. So we end on June 4th. But a couple weeks ago, on May 8th, we actually held an in-person graduation for our class of 2020. So we had probably about a third of the class from all of our various programs come back as part of our reunion weekend and have an in-person graduation. So it was very nice seeing them and being able to celebrate their graduation from 2 years ago. Other than that, something that just happened today, our Polsky Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation announced our 12 finalists for our New Venture Challenge. So that is happening next week, and these 12 companies are going to compete for about $1.5 million of funding through a group of investors. So that's a lot of energy and a lot of things happening on campus next week, along with finals and prepping for graduation. Okay, great. That's a ton of good news, which is good. I think some people touched on this already. Michael touched on it, but yeah, I mean, we're hopefully at the end, but it seems like it's resurgent. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even put that there. It's like bad karma to say we're hopefully reaching the tail end, but just maybe you can share
where your school is with this, and for ease to go easy on the host, we're going to go in reverse order here. So we'll start with Donna Swinford, move to Donna Clarke. Michael, if you want to add anything, we'll go to Diana and then Bruce.
So we opened up our campus to visitors on April 4th. We are open doors, admissions office, and we have had our campus visit program happening a couple days a week since then. We have seen a lot of people come to campus and be able to participate in a full day visit program. And we will continue that through the summer. And for our evening and our weekend programs, we've also reintroduced in-person interviews at the same time.
Okay.
So we're back in business.
Okay.
Probably going to close. We don't know.
Donna Clarke.
Sure, we opened about a month ago, but our students just graduated on Sunday, and we're really encouraging people to wait until the fall when students are on grounds again. So in September, almost every Monday and Friday, we'll have events on grounds, showcase events or tours. We're going to be allowing students to sit in on class again, which will be really wonderful. And I would say overall for recruiting, kind of planning about a third of our recruiting will be travel, a third will be virtual, and about a third will be on grounds. But people are welcome to come in the summer, but we really encourage you to come when you can sit in on a class in the fall and meet students and participate in different events that we have planned.
Okay. Michael, anything to add on you already sort of gave us a little bit of pandemic update, but still.
Yeah, just a quick thing. So because I think Donna just mentioned travel. So we are, I guess, still going to be in somewhat of a hybrid mode. So we are hitting the road doing a lot, some domestic travel, but also traveling outside the country as well. Not anything close to the scale that we had, pre-COVID, but we're kind of slowly working our way back to normalcy, and hopefully we'll get there at some point.
Great. Diana?
Yeah, I mentioned, a moment earlier that our students this month were on short-term study abroad. They were in Israel. They've done various trips to Colombia and Andorra and Patagonia and various places throughout the year. And so I know that one question that's kind of top of mind for prospective students is sort of, if I engage in particular in a full-time MBA experience, are some of the experiences that I would expect to have as a full-time student back? And the answer is yes. Right there, they are back. And I would say they have been back this past year. And, God willing, right, things continue to progress in the trajectory that we hope that they are and that they have been so far. Some of those things are back and people are engaged full time and they're doing the experiences that you would expect. So I would talk to the current students a little bit about what some of that is looking like. If you're, concerned or worried about that, please know that it's definitely progressing in the right direction. And we want to make sure students are safe and supported in doing that. But things are going particularly well. And, I think in terms of visiting, the one thing I would say is find the right time to visit. I think there's on some levels, people say, I have to go visit before I apply. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. And especially if you're looking at round one and you're talking about what could be early, mid-September deadlines, might not be great to visit, in particular over the summer if people aren't around. And even into September, you might be better off visiting when you interview or perhaps even as you're deciding to come for an admitted weekend. And one of the nice things that's happened over COVID is that all of our schools have really enhanced our ability for you to visit virtually, right? For you to connect and engage with us, with our student ambassadors, with our content, but even with the physical spaces that we have where we've been able to feature those things online. So if you visit, great, know that it is for you. It does not give you a leg up in admission. I'm going to say that again. You visiting does not give you a better chance of getting in. So visit at the time that you think is the best time for you to visit, and do take advantage of some of the virtual experiences. Or if you catch us on the road, which we're going to be doing at least domestically, if not a little bit internationally, we encourage you to come and interact with us.
Diana's basically forcing me to advance the slide here to the next question, which is, are you going to be continuing primarily with virtual interviews? Are there expectations that applicants come to campus? So I'll let Bruce go, and then if anyone else Donna, Michael, or Donna have anything to add, then please go ahead. And Bruce, yes, next year we're going to present you with the merit badge for perfect attendance. Yes, there'll be a formal presentation.
I look forward to that ceremony. It's exciting. So which question are we on? I mean, I'm happy to talk about
talking about just how
where the office is.
Sorry, Mike. There we go.
Okay.
Where are we in terms of where your schools with just,
Yep.
and then, but also, what do you expect for interviews, and do you feel that people
Yep.
need to attend on campus? So I've rolled them all into one because Diana saw the future.
I know, as Diana kind of answered all those questions already, so there's not really much to add. But I would echo what everyone said. Students have been traveling. We've had our international experience trips around the globe and our global network weeks, and those happened this past spring. So students are back on the road. We've had some on campus. We had our on-campus admitted student event this past spring, and then some campus visits as well. We have more campus visits going into the summer. And as Donna and Diana and others have said, obviously you want to pick your time to come. The summer is a little quieter, so you get a little more attention from the admissions officers, but there aren't students and classes aren't in session, so there's definitely a trade-off. We're back on the road domestically for now. We're going to keep the international travel for the moment virtual, but hoping to fold that into the fall. And we have our students who are out on internships who are doing coffee chats, and so that's a great way to connect with the community as well. So there's a lot happening. For campus visits, we are trying to have some guardrails. We know there's an attestation that Yale requires about being vaccinated, and we'll do the rapid antigen test before you enter the building. So we're just trying to make sure we continue to be mindful and keep the community safe while we are welcoming people onto campus. In terms of the upcoming year, we haven't made a decision on interviews yet. We've obviously been virtual for the last couple of years. We will probably continue with some. We've always, even before the pandemic, we had some. I think we all had some portion of our interviews that were virtual, and that will continue. Whether we will resume the on-campus interviews, it's unclear yet. We're still working on that. But to that point, to the point about the expectation that applicants come to campus, I think Diana said it incredibly well. Visiting campus, it's not a check the box situation. It's for you. It does not advantage you in the decision-making process. We don't look to see whether you come to campus in terms of whether you'll be admitted or not. So that's really for your benefit and not for us in terms of making our admission decision. And the same with interviews, actually, whether we are in person or virtual, we don't, coming to campus is a great experience if you can do it, but it doesn't advantage you in the decision-making process. So we admit people who interview virtually at the same rate that we admit people who come to campus and interview in person. So don't worry about if you're in Beijing or in Mumbai or Mexico City or wherever you are, and you can't come to campus and you need to do a virtual interview. That's not going to disadvantage you. You have the same chance of being admitted. So hopefully that's not it doesn't stress you or cause any anxiety in terms of the process.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else to add? Donna, Michael? I've sort of jumped around.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say a quick thing, because I agree with everything that my colleagues have said. One of the things I want to add, though, is that while there is an expectation that people need to come to campus, the expectation, though, is that you still have to do real diligence on our program to make a good case as to why you would be a good fit and why you can contribute, right? So and now there are so many ways to do that virtually as well. So I just want to make sure that I said it very clearly. With our process, we historically have most of our interviews are done by alums in the city where the candidate is based, and now we live in this hybrid world. And what I found, that even though while we're recommending and telling people to do interviews virtually, a growing number of people were still meeting, and doing the interviews in person, even though that's not what that wasn't our expectation. But it's just interesting in terms of the people had different levels of risk in the process, and some people met and some people decided to do things virtually. But again, you don't have to come in person. But again, I really expect people to spend some time doing real diligence to figure out what can I contribute to this program? Is this a good place for me to spend my MBA?
I'll jump in and say one of the things, and I've heard other panelists talk about this in other situations that I think is probably true for all of us, is that giving people the opportunity to interview virtually has made coming for an interview more accessible. I know we're planning to offer choice next year. You can come to Grounds and interview, or you can participate. And like Bruce said, there's no weight given to someone who came to Grounds versus somebody who did it virtually, but it really illuminated sort of the accessibility of interviews, and some it can be expensive, and so the plan right now is to give people a choice. If there's a big wave in the fall, we may have to pivot to all virtual interviews, but the hope is to be able to give people a choice.
Okay. I guess maybe we'll move on from this. So just in general, we're at the end of the year. Kind of looking back, is there, have there been any trends in this past cycle? I've learned not to ask people to look at the future, but looking back, anything that anyone has observed that they can comment on, just in terms of what's going on in the applicant pool these days. Donna Clarke looks like she's ready to go, so I'm going to give my old friend Donna a chance.
I've been doing this for 30 years, and I would characterize the past year as the single most competitive year that I have seen in terms of the widespread decline in domestic applications. The economy has been really strong. It's not unusual when the economy is strong to see applications go down, but I'll let others chime in on their trends. Just have the pervasiveness of the trend has really, struck me. I think a lot of people, I wish we had a crystal ball, Jeremy. If you have access to one, please share. But
I'll call you tomorrow.
So, a lot of people are anticipating that there's a recession, and during a recession, applications tend to go up. So I guess, we're approaching next year. Let's assume it's going to be as competitive as last year, and if it's not, we'll be pleasantly surprised. But that is the word volatility is so key in what you're asking, because I think a lot of us have been doing this for a long time, and you see all kinds of cycles. But it was a very competitive year.
So, but you said it was a competitive year, but domestic applications fell. So I think what you're saying is that international applications increased and made it particularly competitive.
Yeah, I'm sorry, competitive probably in the industry amongst schools.
Industry.
I mean, I think everybody kind of likely going after a smaller domestic pool. So not competitive as competitive to be admitted, but competitive within the industry. Sorry, right. I should have clarified.
Okay. That. So, I mean, I think one way of also thinking about this from the applicant's perspective here is that if domestic, especially if you're a domestic applicant, the domestic applications have fallen off. And we, again, I'm certainly not a macro economist, and we can probably, I think most people can see some form of slowdown coming. Maybe, lots of everything. Facebook has said they're not hiring. Amazon and Walmart have said they're overstaffed. I think that's sort of a euphemism for layoffs are coming. Some startups have already started laying people off. I mean, I think. Even if there's a small change, it probably, as opposed to like some massive recession like we saw in 2008 or during the beginning of COVID, one might expect that next year would be a tougher year for applicants. So I think this is probably a golden opportunity for any applicant who is considering this year, next year, or I want to reach a little bit with the schools. I would say apply this year, assuming you're ready, and don't be afraid to reach a little bit this year. It looks like we might be at a trough in the cycle, and that it should tip upward soon. Anyone else want to? We don't all have to jump in on these. I've learned over the years that that we can not. It works better to keep the flow going. But does anyone else have anything to talk about in terms of their?
I'd like to jump in as well, because
for sure.
Like Donna, this year was challenging, so I'm not 30, but I'm 19 and a half, so I think when schools report, you're going to see like lower yield numbers. this isn't public. I mean, I won't share anything that's not supposed to. I'm going to keep private things private. But I think when admissions officers speak with each other, I mean, the cost to recruit, financial aid, that piece is increasing. And I actually saw this interesting article in New York Times this morning, but they're talking about the undergraduate population, and they're saying like declines in applicants across the board for undergrads. But the thing that was more telling though was that more and more people are questioning the value proposition of additional schooling. So I know we've had this thing in terms of like what's happening in the economy, and you see these counter-cyclical movements in terms of applications and what's happening in the economy. But in terms of what this article was saying, there's something is different now, where like I'm questioning the value. So if that young person is questioning the value of additional schooling, then that person wants, on average, a bigger financial aid package, which makes it more expensive for schools. And then it also means often more time spent in talking with applicants as well, just to be reassured that like this is the right time and so on. So it feels different, and I've been through multiple recessions. It doesn't feel like that. And I don't think we're at a recession. I think there are pockets of places that are struggling. But when I speak to the people in our CMC, it's not like 2008 where you literally saw offers being rescinded, so that's not happening right now, but maybe 6 months from now, it may be something very, very different. But I think job-wise, it's still fairly strong, unless you're like a crypto person, and that's kind of really tough in the last month.
Right. Anyone else like to comment or join in?
Yeah, I mean, just to build on what Michael was saying, I think as you all see the career outcomes of our graduates that are graduating this month, you're going to see some really strong outcomes. So as employment reports come out,
Donna, you're forcing me again. So here we go. How are your students doing with recruiting? You're always one step ahead of me here, Dan.
Yeah, just some foreshadowing what you've got. But yes, I mean, the students are doing incredible. And I think as we talk about the market, as we talk about the potential, you're taking a look, and you all should look at employment reports. You should look at employment reports for a few different reasons. One, it's obviously going to show you the post-MBA outcomes, the breakdown of who's, what percentage of the class is going into which places. It's also going to show you the geographic outcomes. And I think that can be a big misconception among schools of, if I go to school A, then I have to geographically base, if I go to Columbia, I have to stay in New York. It's not true, right? And so the Columbia grads and all of our grads are going in different places. The employment report, of course, is the place to see that. But the students are doing very well. I think the internship recruiting was really strong. The full-time recruiting was very strong. I'll tell you, I think with consulting in particular, lots of momentum with consulting this past year, lots of offers, a lot of engagement with our students. And so we aren't seeing any of that slow down right now. At this point, obviously, Jeremy, I know you qualified as, none of us are economists. I know my last name's Economy, but I'm not an economist. We'll see where things trend. But for the moment, they're continuing to stay pretty hot.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add that just 4 o'clock today in a meeting, the head of career services announced that our numbers are back to pre-pandemic levels at this point in the year, which is very encouraging for our current students.
Yeah, I mean, someone in the chat, actually, Tristan asked, and if I could ask him to switch, although it's not a problem at this point, because the questions are few at this point, but let's use the chat instead of the Q&A. But he said, as we might be heading towards a recession, how are career centers equipped to help students in these potentially challenging times? And I think I'm assuming the answer is quite well equipped. I mean, considering they've just gotten out of probably the most challenging period in the history of career services during the pandemic, I imagine there's some applicable learning to that.
I think, one of the things I've heard our career services people say is that just like several of us have ridden through recessions and, strong economies, so have they. And it is one of the reasons that I reinforce the participants that are here today thinking about getting an MBA, regardless of whether you where you go. There's always going to be a demand for MBAs. You know, obviously sometimes it pulls back a little bit, but they're so used. A lot of our offices have people that are seasoned and have navigated recessions in the past too.
Yeah.
And if I could just jump in quickly, I think, you know, just to echo the points that everyone has made, you know, there is a cyclicality obviously to the market. You know, right now things remain very strong. I mean, and so Diana, Donna, you know, we just like you all, we're seeing sort of numbers that are at or above sort of pre-pandemic levels. That's not to say things won't change. And I think to Donna's point, you know, we've all seen these cycles play out, and our career services teams are very well equipped to handle them. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is it obviously is very much to some degree about that first job after graduation, but the MBA is definitely a degree for the long haul. And so you obviously need that first job, but the value of the MBA, I think we'd all agree, sort of grows the farther in your career you progress. And the farther up you go, and the broader your perspective, and the sort of the larger your impact. And so having that longer term perspective in mind, I think is helpful as well. Obviously, you're focused on this immediate job, but I think our career services is very much focused on not just getting you that first job, but also preparing you for a lifetime of searches and a lifetime of leadership. And so I think having that bigger picture in mind is helpful. And I think that also speaks to the decision about whether to get an MBA or not. I think we're seeing, given this rather, I don't know if say overheat is the right word, but this very sort of very hot economy, I think a lot of people are making the decision to stay in their current job because it's very, you know, companies are doing a lot to retain workers. I think that can make some sense, but I worry that people are making the short-term decision to stay and foregoing the longer-term benefit of getting the MBA. And so really thinking, you know, not making decisions that will foreclose other options that would be better positions would position you better in the long term is something you need to think about. So I think that's a larger question, but something I think that is important to consider as well. Taking a little bit of a detour there, Jeremy, I apologize, but just going from career services to MBA more generally.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know where I was. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that, or we can move towards just general application questions. And there's already, so let me give everyone a chance to chime in. Please do it through the chat, through the Q&A. But Catherine has a very good question here. I think that it might be best answered by one or maybe two people, because I think that there's going to be a coalescing of advice around this one. But nonetheless, it's common knowledge that COVID turned the world upside down. That extends to the career force and people's jobs. What recommendations do you have for students who have clear disruptions in their resume, where they have either been out of work or had to change industries, and how would one overcome that in the application process? I don't know if anyone wants to. I see a lot of nodding heads here. Donna, Clarke, why don't you jump in?
Sure. I think many schools have an opportunity under additional comments to shed any information that may not be apparent. And that would be a great opportunity to let people know, like, we're all, I know everybody on this panel really well, very compassionate, you know, people, and obviously follow the news and know that, you know, millions of people were displaced or furloughed or laid off. And you know, we're going to continue to see gaps in employment due to COVID probably for a few years, you know, in between jobs and things like that. So I would recommend just using the additional comment section to explain a gap in your resume. And I think that's going to be, I think most of us are going to, you know, it's going to be understood given the broader context.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can also add to that it's not just your resume, but also your transcript. That especially now that we are seeing transcripts, especially, I know we're going to talk about deferred admissions later on, but people who were in school during this time where they may have taken things pass fail that they might not have, and just these disruptions that anything you want to just let us know. The optional essay is why we have that optional essay.
Yeah, I mean, I just add, I mean, Michael, Amanda, your colleague, I'm just such a compassionate person. I remember her in the past, she I think talked about her own personal experience being laid off in like, I think it might've been the first tech bust, and how she kind of, got back on her feet, and how she personally really understands. And I think her gist was very much like, we understand that there are events that are out of your control and don't hold you responsible for them. Just explain it.
And certainly, I mean, I graduated from Columbia Business School in 2001 as working in a media strategy with Panasonic, and lost a job as well, and kind of fell into admissions because I had a great time. And I thought I'd only be in admissions for 2 years, and 19 and a half years later. But the point though is that, like, they're real humans that work in this space. I mean, and when I think about our team, I mean, a lot of us experience like just life, and sometimes life sucks. I mean, that's just reality. But the thing though, I mean, and I was on another panel where I said this, and I'll say it again. My favorite Nelson Mandela quote is one where he says, like, I never lose. I either win or I learn, right? So sometimes with tough times, I mean, sometimes if you take it as feedback, if you take it as a learning opportunity and try to grow from it, I think that's what I think we as admissions office would look for, where, okay, well, I got this setback, so then what's next, and then how do I go forward? And I think that's what I'd look for. But know that the entire team and my colleagues here are all humans. We're humans first.
Awesome. I'm gonna pick Donna Swinford to go for this one here. What's the process by which you create an application? How are your essays chosen?
This is a great question, and so we interview a lot of stakeholders across our program of faculty, our career coaches, advisors, our student life, academic advisors, and want to hear about the characteristics that they think make strong students and strong alumni. And we then look to see in our application how we find those characteristics. How can we assess them? And when we look at our application, a couple years ago, we had some essay questions that were trying to get at specific things, but they became very repetitive in how people were answering them. So we became very deliberate in what we asked in the application versus what we asked in the interview. And we moved a lot of that to the interview. So our application is just tell us why you want an MBA, what you want to do, so that we can understand and make sure that this is the right time for you to pursue that MBA, that you've gone through that process of why the MBA is right for you at this moment, as well as our second question is just let us know who you are as a person, because we like to admit people, not applications, and we want to get to know who they are. So it's really just trying to look at what the core values of the institution are and how we can really assess that throughout the application so that we can admit the best people for Booth and who will really flourish at our school.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in and comment on how the applications are chosen, that they're created at their school, or how their essays are chosen? Donna's covered it all. Okay, we got lots of questions, so we'll keep moving. Unless anyone else, Bruce, do you want to jump in?
I think she did. No, I think she did cover it all. But I would just echo and maybe reinforce the last point is we get lots of questions at times. So we get lots of questions about why didn't you ask this in the application, or I wanted to say this in this other thing in the application, and we very much are constructing the application with the whole process in mind. So it's not just the initial submission, but we look at the post-submission elements, we look at the interview, and we try to make what we ask for complementary. So we're not asking for the same things, but we're really thinking about what we ask for, what we want to get, from you, when we want to get it, and how everything fits together. So it's a whole process. So our essay, for example, we work with our organization behavior team. One of our faculty members, Amy Wisniewski, who teaches on the sort of the meaning of work and what it means to be sort of a job versus work versus a calling. And so she helped us construct our essay. And it doesn't ask you why you want to get an MBA or why you want to go to Yale, but people say, well, I want to talk about that. And we have other places where we ask about that. So that speaks to a little bit, we have the big picture in mind. So we want to make sure you're answering the questions we're asking, because we're going to have other places where we ask for other things, and it all fits together.
Okay. Anyone else on this one? Okay. Are there any changes to your essays expected for the upcoming application season? So I guess some of Donna's released her questions, I guess, Donna Clarke. So I don't know if you made any changes because it was released today.
Yeah, one of the changes we made was to ask a question. I think inclusion in our society is a really important topic, and it's important. At Darden, the class is very diverse. We have 40% of the students that are international, 40 different countries represented, really intentional about compiling a diverse class. And we have a question that I don't remember the exact wording, but basically asks people to share a tangible example of a time that they fostered inclusion and sort of what they would bring to the Darden community, because I think, it's very well known for being a tight-knit community, but it takes everybody contributing to that and making others feel included, and being very intentional about that. So that is a new essay question. And then there's like a different version. Last year, we asked, basically everybody's assigned to a learning team. What would you like your learning team to know about you? This is a question just about all the clubs and opportunities that there are at Darden, and what you want your classmates to know about you that's not on your resume. And I love that. I love the question, just because of all the things that people can talk about. It's so fascinating to see what people choose, and so many of them are so good, But as people, we have many different facets of our backgrounds and traits and characteristics. So I really enjoy seeing what people most emphasize.
Any changes to anyone's? So Michael, yours came up today as well.
Yeah. So we made a change. So we had an optional question last year where we highlighted what we call it PPIL, which is a Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership. And one of the takeaways that we got from looking at many of the responses was that people read and interpret the word inclusion in very different ways depending on where they're from in the world, right? And some people had real difficulty in getting that question, and there's no right or wrong way to answer the question. It's just a matter of just learning about a person's experience. So what we did with our change this year is that we kind of made the question simpler, but we still talk about collaboration and inclusion, and link the candidate to aspects where they can learn more about those themes at Columbia. But once you have that framework or that setup, then it shifts more into why are you a good fit for Columbia, and academically, socially, professionally, and so on, having those prompts before. So you kind of touch on the inclusion theme, you touch on themes about collaboration and so on, and you almost start getting the person thinking on that direction. But then how will you contribute to our community? Why are you the right fit for that? So it's going to be interesting. So we're trying to get people to touch on themes of collaboration and inclusion, and supporting people who may be historically marginalized, but still make it easy for someone who didn't really grow up listening to those kind of themes, because many of our applicants come from places that are very homogeneous, and the conversations around race and gender and orientation are just different everywhere, and some people just have real challenges. So the last thing I'll say on this, right, is that there's no real secret sauce to this, So I think we put things out there. We have conversations with folks, and then we learn as we go through the process as well. And if things need to be changed, we will make adjustments in real time.
Okay. Anyone else have any changes that they can announce or not announce? Okay. Great. Let's keep moving here. And also, I just invite people through the chat to pose their own questions. We got two good ones so far. Could anyone be so brave as to discuss the breakdown of admits, or maybe the application volume and admits in your classes, round 1, round 2, round 3, and waitlist? I think that's sort of a black box to most applicants, and laying down the gauntlet and challenging someone here. Bruce.
I can start, and then I can give a just general schematic, and people can sort of, if you have different responses. But for us, so round 1's the fall round, round 2 is the January round for us, and round 3 is our April spring round. And for round 2 is typically the largest round for us. Round 1 is typically half the size of round 2 in terms of application volume, and round 3 is about half the size of round 1. So that's the order. We tend to, and every year is different in terms of how many we admit, but we model to, in terms of percentage of applicants, to admit a little more heavily in round 1, and then less so in round 2, round 3. But we do that recognizing that round 1, typically the overall quality of the round, and based on traditional metrics in terms of sort of grades and test scores, is highest in round 2 and then less in round, highest in round 1, less in round 2, a little bit less in round 3. So we model to admit a little more aggressively in round 1, but we do so in a way that we feel means that the same applicant has the same chance of being admitted whatever round you apply in, if that makes sense. So we're kind of controlling for the variability in quality and application volume, so that it doesn't matter whether you apply in round 1 or round 2, or round 3 is qualified, because that can often depend on when, how much room is left in the class, and that can be there can be either more room than we're modeling or less room, depending on what the yield is for the first 2 rounds. But we admit a somewhat higher percentage in round 1 than round 2, but based on the relative sort of qualitative differences in the rounds, we believe, and we work hard to make sure that there's no difference in your chance of being admitted round 1 versus round 2, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that doesn't sound completely. I've seen lots of nodding from the people who are also doing this. So hopefully it made sense, at least to my peers, but hopefully it makes sense to everyone listening as well.
No, that was great. I mean, I think it's a level of candor that certainly people can appreciate. Anyone else have any comment on that?
Yeah, Bruce, I would add to that, we talk a little bit about the modeling, right? So we've got some good sense of, like, you're seeing a set of candidates now, you're going to see another sort of larger group that in round 2. And so it's not just how many you admit, but it's also scholarshiping, right? And how much scholarship money you keep behind. You don't want to have a great set of candidates here that you can't attract to your school to get the right people to fill your class. And so, one thing I want to mention to, candidates is you're taking a look at the different rounds. Keep in mind that if you apply in round 1, so call this like September, you're going to find out in December, and you are going to have to put down a fairly sizable deposit by February, right? So generally speaking. And so I think sometimes people will say, oh, I'll apply to some in round 1 and I'll apply to some in round 2. Keep in mind that you're going to need to put down a deposit at a school of a fairly sizable amount for your round 1 to secure that spot if you want the optionality to apply in round 2. Or if your apps are ready and you've figured out the right schools to apply to, if you apply to all of your schools in the same round, you have the same decision set, I guess, to be able to make that decision. And, depending on how much planning you prefer, right? If you apply in round 1, you're going to know by February, right? Or you'll know by December where you're in, and you'll have perhaps made a decision by February. In round 2, you're starting to talk about being admitted in March and deciding by the end of April. And of course, round 3, is right now you're talking about just a few months before school's starting. So people are depositing and finding a lease at the same time. So you just have to think about your own kind of timing, planning, risk aversion with all of that. But most importantly is to apply in the round that you think your app is the strongest. There's no gaming it, right? It's not, okay, if I do this, then my chances are this much better to do this. As Bruce has mentioned, we've normalized it such that we better understand how many are likely to apply in a given round to give ourselves and candidates the best chance to get admitted, regardless of which round they choose. Typically in the first 2 rounds for sure. Round 3 can be a little bit different depending on how the classes are shaking out with our first 2 rounds and, and the offers that we've given. So I would say probably fewer are admitted in round 3, but there's also fewer candidates. And Bruce has mentioned in some cases the quality starts to go down a little bit as well in terms of the applicant pool towards the end.
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but can I ask Michael or maybe Donna to talk about like the role of ED and EA in the process?
Yeah, but I guess I want to jump in and
Sure.
stay on this question for a bit, because we don't have rounds at Columbia. We have rolling admission, so our process is different. Right. And like our round 1 equivalent is early decision, and if admitted, you really, your application says that I will draw my applicants from other schools. The deposit is not 2,000, it's 6,000, right? So the thing about the people who apply to us early decision, they tend to historically have done more diligence. They tend to be more emotionally connected to the school, more excited, enthusiastic, and so on. And then we haven't done this in a number of years, but I remember a while back we did some analysis just to kind of see like who's more likely to become a leader in the school. And the people who were in that early decision pool who paid the larger deposit and so on, like they were overrepresented, right? So and with rolling, what essentially means that like we read and review the applications in order that we get them. So the earlier you apply, the better your chances. So it's not, so our process is not the same as Bruce described. So the people who are upfront do have a better chance because of where they're at the front of the line, but then that's offset by the fact that you have the sizable deposit. So then a lot of people are like, no, I want more optionality because I'm going to apply by the January deadline. So I'll get a decision around March and so on. So I'll have more information and not have this hefty deposit. So that's still the bulk of our applicant pool. But there's a place for people who are super excited, like this is really where I want to be, and it gives them a shot to demonstrate that in the application process.
Yeah, we have early decision binding and non-binding at Darden. And one of the things that I hear frequently from faculty members is, we want students who really want to be here, and early action is not the only way to signal that Darden's a top choice. Early action is kind of targeted to people who have done a lot of research and know Darden is their top choice, but they can take a binding or non-binding path. But it's really interesting what Michael said about the early applicants being really involved as leaders. I do think that applying early action and really wanting to be there does translate into the community. And we are a little bit more generous in early action with both offers of admission and scholarships than we are in the other rounds, and pretty transparent about that. It's a win-win. I think, we get applicants who really want to be at Darden, and they can find out really early in the process and make plans to look for housing, and you're increasing your chances of admission slightly.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's let this one go. I think we talked about sort of CBS and Darden's accepting of sorry, that we're moving. This isn't the. I'm mixing up my EAs here. This is EA, like the executive assessment, which is sort of an alternative to the GMAT. And CBS and Darden have taken sort of broadened the test optionality. Darden even going further and accepting the LSAT, MCAT, CFA level 1, others as indicators. as the EA, would any others, are any other schools on the verge of, are you considering it? Are you accepting it? And Michigan's also broadened its, included, I think also the LSAT, the MCAT, and other options. But yeah, is there any propensity, I guess, Donna, Diana, Bruce, to look at broadening the test? Well, everyone's doing different things. So Diana has broadened the test pool, but I believe the EA isn't accepted at Michigan at this point. And
That's right.
and then, okay, this is a really actually diverse group here in terms of testing, because I believe Michael, CBS has GRE, GMAT, and EA, but doesn't have that whole swing of other, LSAT, MCAT, CFA. Donna still has test waiver options and has all of the LSAT, MCAT, CFA. Diana has, I think, everything but the EA, and Bruce and Donna Swinford, I believe, are still GRE and GMAT. So, okay, am I right, Donna? Okay, Swinford. Okay, okay, so close. Okay, so Donna Swinford, is there a world where you consider broadening your test options, or can you talk about maybe if you're not, why, if there's been some discussion and why we're sort of sticking with the GMAT GRE?
So we do accept the LSAT for those who are
Okay.
applying for our JD MBA program, not for
Okay.
just for the JD MBA. And I think that we haven't really looked at adding any of the other tests to the program or for accepting. We do accept the EA for our MBA and for our evening and weekend programs, but not for the full-time. I don't know what appetite that we have right now to further expand. It's not something that we've really talked about. So I don't really have an answer as to why we're not or why we would. We haven't really had those conversations.
Okay. Diana Economy, I mean, so many options. The EA isn't one of them. Is there any intentionality by that at this point, or?
Yeah, similar. I mean, with the LSAT and the MCAT, I'll be honest with you, very, very few people submit that. And the people who do submit it, it's in particular the LSAT, and it's somebody who was a senior in college, thought they were going to go to law school and decided not to. Right. And so we're saying, we'll look at the LSAT, but we also, and we are reviewing this to kind of roll out what our new plan will be for the next year. But the last 2 years, we've had a test waiver offering, and candidates could, in demonstrating to us their academic readiness, illustrate different things that they've done to highlight that. So the EA was one of those things that you could put in consideration for a test waiver. So you could say, I have a CPA, I have a CFA, I do this rigorous work experience, I majored in engineering in undergrad, right? I've taken the EA. A variety of those things could be considered. And as I know, Dawna at Darden, we're looking typically at folks who've demonstrated multiple things. It's usually somebody who has both work experience as well as undergraduate experience. So the EA could be additive to the case for a waiver. Right. But we have not offered it outright and don't plan to, but we are reviewing our test waiver plans. What I will tell you is for the last year, which is the first year we've had test waiver candidates in seat, which is to say the MBAs, rising MBA 2s, 82% of the class has a test score. All right, so it's 18% that doesn't have a test score. That we offered it during COVID a lot of time for the reason of people were having difficulty taking the test. They were having difficulty having consistent internet connection in the virtual world, or they weren't in an environment that was conducive to their performance on that test. However, now that we have people in seat, what I can tell you is they're doing well. Right? The folks that are on waiver were doing well academically. They have good internships. Yes, they have internships at the places where people assume you need a GMAT or GRE to get there. You don't, right? The top consulting firms, the top banks have people from our class who have a test waiver who will be interning at them this summer. So we are reviewing that now with the knowledge that we have in hand as we roll out the plan going forward as to what we will review. We hope to reveal that in the next few weeks.
Okay.
And I want to jump on this as well, Jeremy, because because I love history and I like to predict the future as well, and I always feel at it. But one of the things I find interesting though is that so many of the top undergraduate institutions have had SAT waivers for a number of years and plan to maintain them, right? So So we have a bunch of people who are in their early 20s who are kind of coming for us in 4 to 5 years. And their expectation is, well, I mean, I did really well at this really elite liberal arts education and so on. I didn't have an SAT and so on. That's fine. And I still got a great job from McKinsey or Goldman Sachs and so on. So get with the program, right? So they're kind of coming for us. So it should be really interesting what happens in the next like 3 to 5 years, because I think the expectations may change because they're getting used to like having these test optional environments. But as I say that, there are no immediate plans or even midterm plans at Columbia to become a test optional school. But I'm really watching with curiosity what's happening at some of the leading undergraduate institutions across the country. And these young people are having, to Diana's point, great outcomes without it, right? So there are other ways to determine whether or not a person is the right academic fit for your program. I think it makes more for us in admissions, but for some people, I think it could be worth further exploration.
That's a really interesting point about the culture clash and the coming cohort of applicants who never had to take tests. That is an interesting crystal ball there, Michael. Well done. Okay, great. Let's. I know there are 1 or 2 more questions from here, so I'm gonna maybe move along because we're starting to get applicant questions, which is good. That's where we want to be. I'll take a look at the chat. Okay. Okay. I'm going to come back to that question. We're sort of moving. Okay, I think we sort of touched on some of these. Yeah, let's talk about this, then I'll go to an applicant question. This is kind of similar to the question that was asked by Allison Eng, who asks, what are some of the most common mistakes or cliches you've seen in applications? And this is, I think, the last question. So that I'm going to ask, we'll ask it now. So common mistakes, but also, can you describe a particularly memorable applicant and what was unique about him or her? I think maybe said differently, because we can't really share specifics of people's applications, but what allows someone to be memorable to you or to really stand out. So failings or errors and people who succeeded, what can we glean from them?
I'm happy to jump in. And I think one of the things that has resonated with me over the years, and this is just one example of things that can stand out, are stories, vignettes, anecdotes that illustrate a point that somebody is trying to make. I just reconnected with a Darden alum a couple weeks ago. It was back for his reunion, and I interviewed him about 25 years ago, and he showed me a picture. He had a history of volunteerism, and in his interview, he showed me a picture of him dressed up like a clown. He would go into the Boston, a hospital in Boston, and volunteer in the children's ward. And like years later, I remember when I saw him that he showed me this picture. It was very, visual. But I would say one of the things that I appreciate or that I hear often in admissions committee is, oh, this is the person who told me this story about X, Y, or Z. So that's one way a person can stand out. That I'll share. It's by far not the only way. And I would say in terms of missed opportunities, the question on the screen, I would say the resume. I am always surprised by how many people, some people submit a very professionally formatted resume, and it's obviously been very thought out, and others are quite sloppy. So that's an opportunity to research what is a typical business school format. Maybe work with someone who has some expertise in a resume, format, or really helping you use action words that, are going to make your job responsibilities pop. But I see that pretty frequently. I wouldn't say if somebody is otherwise a stellar applicant that it is going to prohibit him or her from getting admitted. But I think that's a pretty big missed opportunity that I see.
Okay. Anyone else? Missed opportunities or seized opportunities?
The one I always share on panels is when people just don't answer a question. They leave sections blank. And as we talked about before, as Bruce pointed out, each part of the application is very intentional. And if you don't answer something, you are really wasting your opportunity. And it frequently happens.
Okay. I think, yeah, that's why I'm like, always answer the question, ask the question, ask the question. Just type in someone. If you have a question, please put it in the chat for everyone as opposed to just to me, because otherwise people can't see it. Okay. Let's talk. I mean, everyone here has a deferred admissions program. Yeah, everyone does. So let's talk about deferred MBAs because they're becoming more and more popular. First of all, I mean, can you share any data on how many students apply, how many students you're accepting, like how many will actually appear in a class a couple of years later, because there is some melt at times. So a little bit of pushing on data, which is, I think, typically not my style, but I'm going to go for it nonetheless. Donna Swinford, please. Are you?
So I can share that we've had a deferred admissions program since 2002. So we have some historical data that we can look at. Up until, I think, 3 years ago, we only allowed University of Chicago students to apply in their 4th year. But since then, just like everyone else on this presentation, we've all expanded that to allow for any current undergraduate student. And typically, the U Chicago students, we would probably get about 40% who will come back within 5 years. We would have the time frame from 2 to 5 years. It used to be 2 to 4 years. But a lot of times, when someone's been out in the workforce for 2 years, they're now getting their first promotion. They now are seeing this opportunity. They might change position. So it may not be the right time. Just like if you look at our class profiles, we probably all lean into 5 years average work experience within our pool. So that's at the top of our deferred time. So we probably, again, will have 60% of people decide not to pursue the MBA because of just other opportunities, or they may pursue it at different models.
Wow, 60% are not. Is that consistent with anyone else's experience at all? No one wants to touch this one? Okay.
We've had the program in place since 2002, so we
just don't know yet. So we're still relatively early. But I think like next year we may have several dozen people like within the program. But it's kind of a crapshoot because you really don't know. But I think though what might be more helpful is kind of like saying like, if you are applying to the program, you know, what are some things that can make one strong? And I do a number of these interviews, and one of the filters I use in assessing people in the interviews is I really look for maturity, because like academically they're strong and sharp, so that's not an issue at all. But when I think about the experience of a Columbia Business School students or alumni, they'll always say they learn just as much from their classmates as their professors. So I need to believe that, okay, well, if this person decides to come back in 2 years, like on the short end of the 2 to 5 year window, will they be ready to contribute in 2 years? And that's the key and compelling argument that I would make to our admissions committee. Like this person is ready to contribute. I mean, almost right now because of XYZ. So the maturity piece is something that I really like filter for in my interview conversations, because they're often like they have a good solid job lined up. I mean, the academics are there and solid, so that's not the issue. But like, will they be ready if they decide to come on the short end of the cycle?
Donna, Clarke, please, yeah, jump
Yeah,
in.
sure. So in the last couple of years, we have gotten about 330 to 340 applications for the Future Year Scholars Program at Darden. It is 6 years old. And so last year was the first year that I think the previous year, 4 people entered. In the rising second year class, there are 16 candidates who were Future Year Scholars admitted within the past 6 years, most of them from very early, 5-6 years ago. And in next year's entering class, it'll probably be about the same, 16 to 18 students. So maybe about 5% of the entering class will be students who were admitted through the Future Year Scholars Program, but went out and worked for about 3 years before they matriculated.
And more might have been admitted, but some are just sticking with their jobs or whatever it is. And
yeah, so every year we go out to the students who have been admitted who are eligible. So they have to have at least 2 years. Most are going to choose 3 or 4 years. We have extended a 5th year to some people, but we go out to everybody who's been admitted, who's eligible, and ask if this is the year they're going to opt in. So it's starting to pick up, like I said, 16, 17 people in the second year class, and about the same in next year's entering class.
I think we're spreading ourselves across my questions about EMBAs, about deferred MBAs, which is great. That's awesome. Anyone else? And I want to encourage those who are participants, our attendees, to, if you have any questions, to please put them in the chat, because we are winding down. We're down to our last few minutes, and I want to give people a chance to ask questions while they're here. It's a riskless environment. It's a good one, a friendly environment. And the only thing is I have passed on a couple questions that seem very particular to some individuals, so just please make sure they're broad enough for everyone. But anyone else have anything to share about their deferred programs at all?
Happy to jump in. So ours is a little bit different. Yale, we have our Silver Scholars Program, which you had, I think, Donna, we're maybe around the same vintage. We've had ours for 20 or so years. Ours is a little bit different in the sense that it's not deferred admission. It's direct from college. So you graduate from your undergraduate and then you start with us in the fall. And so in that sense, there's less, I guess we don't, not as concerned about attrition, or there isn't as much attrition, but it tends to be, I would say, the few hundred applications each year. It's probably about 10% of our applicant pool, about 7.5 to 10% of our students as well. It's a little bit more competitive than the overall pool, but not dramatically. So it tends to, the last few years, it jumped during the pandemic. It got up the 40 some odd students per class, but it's typically somewhere in, went from the high teens probably into the 20s and 30s per class in terms of students. But it is different. It's not just you get in as a college senior and then work a few years. You come directly to us at Yale after graduating.
And so to the question on the screen here, is there anything? I mean, clearly there's a different expectation in terms of age and experience, but is there, what makes you look at someone and say they're ready for this? I mean, they're coming right out of college and they're ready to play with, the bigger kids, for lack of a better impromptu analogy.
Yeah, I mean, I can start since I'm already unmuted. And I think it's all the same application elements. It's the same application and same process. But I think to Michael's point, there is maybe a little more maturity. But I think the thing that we're looking at, we don't have the work experience, but we do have internships, we do have activities, and we look for that kind of so the propensity for leadership, those that so bias towards action, and the types of things that we think could be good proxies for what we get from the work experience. So obviously everybody who is applying is competitive tends to be very, very strong academically and good test scores, but it's that those additional elements. And what I tend to say is, even, regardless of where you are in your career path, if you're still in your undergraduate experience, or if you're 10 plus years out, the questions for us, for me at least, are the same. Why do you want an MBA and why now? And the answer can be different depending on where you are along that continuum, but we're open to hearing the answer, and we're open to being convinced, whether you're still in college or whether you're, again, kind of in your 10, as I said, 10 plus years out. So it's really, but specifically for the early career, the deferred admission, those are some of the things we look at beyond just things like grades and test scores.
Anyone else have anything to add? Okay, I'm finally getting a couple good questions here, so I'm gonna skip over the last couple of slides because we only have a few minutes. So Alex asks, for applicants who have a liberal arts undergraduate background that was light on quant courses, what do you recommend for demonstrating quant aptitude apart from the GMAT? What are your thoughts on applicants taking community college quant courses as a way to help their application? A lot of yeses, but yeah.
I'm happy to jump in. I think in this day and age, what's so nice is there are lots of options to build on your quant skills. Taking community college is one good option. There's so many Coursera classes. I know we have some available at Darden. Maybe some of the other schools want to chime in if they have courses that are available on Coursera. I'm a big fan of HBS Online, previously called HBX Core. There's a certification program at Wharton. There's just, classes for people who live in DC. There's some really great classes at the US Department of Agriculture. So never too late to work on those quantitative skills. And you'll be so glad you did it before you start a business school. It just makes life easier, helps with admission, but also will make life easier when you're a student. So great idea.
So funny. I lived in DC and I almost enrolled in a USDA, I think, accounting and finance class before going to business school. Like it's not an agriculture class. They've just got a great continuing education program. It's like, we'll talk about nostalgia. Wow. Okay. Anyone else have anything to add on that? And is there a preference? If this person is in New York, Michael, and this person is saying, I don't want to pay a lot of money for an NYU continuing education class. I want to take one at Pace. Do you feel any different about an A from in accounting or finance or econ or stats from I don't know why I'm picking schools. I shouldn't be. I don't know what the cost of them are.
That's fine. In fact, I've actually told people that, right? Where someone came, I want to take this class. It costs several $1,000s. Well, I've actually told the person there are cheaper options that you can look into. And one of the things, especially if the person that has taken a standardized test only one time, like I've encouraged that same person to try the test again. I think the majority of our applicants take the test at least twice. And for me, I just want the best effort from that person. And it's hard to say that something is your best effort with one attempt, right? So and then I kind of started this conversation by talking about someone who made it to the Fortune 500 with his company within 10 years. And Rob Refkin would tell you his grades were horrible. Like he was a proud C+ student, but in terms of real intangibles, in terms of vision and leadership and execution, he was really good at that from a young age. So again, the academic piece is one piece. But there are other elements to our process, and some of the very best students, best students in terms of the lives that they lived, didn't have the best grades, didn't have the best test scores. So I just want to say that as strongly as I can.
Okay. We're almost at the end of our time, so I want to just and first of all, I want to thank everyone for this. Really nice of everyone to take the time for applicants, and I know that there are many competing things you can be doing on a Thursday evening, so it's very kind of everyone to join. Really, I just want to give everyone a jump ball here at the end. If there's anything you feel like you want to add, or anything you want to say about your program, or about the application year, or anything you'd like, I want to just make sure that you guys get the last word. So Donna Clarke is unmuted, so go for it, Donna Clarke.
Yeah, I just like to remind people that at the time that you apply, most of the hard work is behind you. You know, you've worked for a long time to get to the point of applying to business school, and submitting an application is kind of a matter of documenting what you're most proud of, prioritizing, thinking, you know, through your narrative. But just remind yourself as a way to de-stress that most of the hard work is behind you. It's not ahead of you. I mean, many applicants have been working for years for this. So hopefully that takes the edge off a little bit.
Okay, Donna Swinford, I think you were unmuted, and I want to give you the chance to go next. You were so kind a second ago to put your email in the chat, which is really I think shows the transparency and the willingness to connect with people, which is great.
Yeah, I just want to wish everyone luck in their future. And if they choose to apply to one of our programs, I'm sure that we're all happy to continue these conversations, either by attending one of our virtual or our many in-person events that will be happening, as well as feel free to reach out directly to me with any specific questions. I'm happy to meet with you.
Great. Bruce?
Yeah, I would. One thing I would just say, I know we talked earlier about, you know, not being fortune tellers, not being prognosticators. I think there is, but think just trying to do a little bit of tea leaf reading. I get the sense that this upcoming cycle could be, and I think Jeremy, you spoke to this, could be, you know, another advantageous one for candidates. And so I think if you are thinking about an MBA, and obviously those of you who are on this session, you are. I think, you know, this could be a good time to apply. And so as you're thinking about sort of the cyclicality of the market, and you think about you know, the sort of ebbs and flows of the application cycles, I think my sense is this upcoming year could be a good one for candidates to apply in. So I would encourage you to give it a hard look, and obviously continue to connect with us as you have questions. And I will follow Donna's lead and everyone else's lead and just put my email in there as well.
Very generous of everyone. Thank you. Diana, Michael, go for it. Diana, go last.
I'll be quick. So just before you hit that submit button, just ask yourself one question. Does this application reflect the best of me at this time? And share that with us in a way that's authentic and real. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen over the years is that someone has a conversation with a current member of a school and then tries to model themselves on what they think the school wants to hear. And we don't get to see the real you. And there's something I used to say all the time. If your grandmother saw your application, would she recognize you? You know, so make sure your grandmother is able to recognize the person who submits that application, because your grandmother always loves you to death, you know, and she knows the very best version of you. So share that best version of yourself with us in the application process. And to the other comments that my colleagues had mentioned, and still answer the questions as directly as you can. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right, Michael. Sometimes people try to kind of jam an answer in because they're like, you know, schools really like collaboration. So like, I need to write the word collaboration and tell them just about how collaborative I am. Well, who's best to tell us how collaborative you are? You or your recommender? Right? Just putting it out there. I'm not saying you can't write about how you're collaborative, but you have to do it well. And you're not doing it just because you think that school needs to see that word jammed into that essay, right? Because if we were to pick candidates on everybody has all of the same traits, it'd be a really boring, not particularly diverse class, right? People peak in different ways. There's different things that you're going to be looking to share with us that really highlight who you are and give us a sense of who you might be as you show up in our community. So I know you'll hear this a lot about being authentic. You know, Googling what you think a school wants to hear is a less authentic way to present yourself in this process, right? So it is going to take you some self-reflection to get to where you need to be. But once you get there, it's actually going to be really helpful because you're going to continue to grow and learn as you get into the MBA program as well. Having a good sense of who you are, what you're interested in is going to be very, very helpful. Not only once you start school, but I will tell you, we're already working with our incoming students now in May who are starting in September. So this process goes quickly. The more that you can do up front to serve yourself well, not only the application process, but the MBA experience will help.
Awesome. Again, a huge thank you. We've gone 2 minutes over, which I think is an indulgence. So I'm going to try and wrap this very, very quickly. Thank you to everyone for being our panelists, to everyone for joining us this evening, and good luck with the application season. And as Bruce knows, once you get invited, it's the Hotel California. You can check out. You can never leave. You get invited back. So we'll see everyone. We'll see everyone next year. Thanks especially to first timers here, Donna, Anna, and Michael. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Good luck,
Jeremy.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.